It's 11:47 p.m. You're standing in the gas station parking lot. The fluorescent light above the pump is flickering. Your tank is half full. You don't actually need gas. You stopped here because the truck behind you has been following you for 6 miles. The driver doesn't get out. He just sits there with the engine running, headlights pointed at your back. You can see his silhouette through the windshield. You don't recognize him. He recognizes you. Everyone in this town recognizes you. Let's go back to when you were 14. You're a normal kid in a normal town. Population, 2,847. 1 stoplight. 1 dinner. 1 high school where everyone in your grade has been in the same class since kindergarten. Your mom works at the hospital. Your dad left when you were 9. You ride your bike everywhere. You've never thought about your face. Then something happens the summer before 9th grade. You don't notice it at first. The boys you grew up with stop teasing you and start staring. The bagger at the grocery store calls you sweetheart. Mr. Pruitt, the football coach, gives you a nickname in the hallway. Hey, gorgeous. He says it loud enough for other teachers to hear. They laugh. The vice principal laughs. You laugh too because you don't know what else to do. Mrs. Donnelly at the diner gives you a free milkshake. She says it's because you remind her of her daughter who moved to Tampa. 3 weeks later, she stops speaking to you because her husband won't stop looking up when you walk by the window. You haven't done anything. You're 14. You weigh 109 pounds and you still sleep with the same stuffed bear you've had since you were 6. But the town has decided something about you. And once a town decides something about you, it doesn't undo it. You start avoiding mirrors. The face in them isn't yours anymore. It belongs to the room you walked into. That's the first mistake, thinking you can stay the kid you were. High school becomes a job. You wake up an hour earlier than every other girl in your grade because everything you wear gets read. A t-shirt is a statement. Jeans are a statement. A ponytail is a statement. You learn to dress for a courtroom you didn't know you were on trial in. Mr. Halloran, your English teacher, starts asking you to stay after class to go over your essays. Your essays don't need going over. You have an A in the class without him. You sit 2 feet from his desk while he explains thesis statements to you for the 4th time, and you keep your eyes on the door. The girls you've known since 4th grade start sitting 1 table over at lunch. Not all at once. 1 by 1. Madison stops inviting you to sleepovers. Then Brooke. Then the Weatherby twins, who you used to ride bikes with every summer. Nobody says why. You already know why. Their boyfriends won't stop bringing you up. Their dads ask about you when they come home from work. You become the reason their houses are quiet at dinner, and they hate you for a thing you didn't choose. Your sister is 12. She's watching all of this. She used to wear sweatshirts and ride bikes and never think about it. Now she stands in front of the mirror for 45 minutes before school. She started wearing eyeliner in 6th grade. She is studying you the way an apprentice studies a craftsman, learning what to do and what not to do, and you cannot tell her either way because you don't know yourself. You get a boyfriend, Tyler, the quarterback, because that's what's supposed to happen. He's nice for the first 3 months. Then he starts checking your phone. Then he starts asking who you talk to at the gas station. Then he punches a hole in his bedroom wall because a senior named Cody held the door for you at the dollar store. He apologizes. You forgive him. You break up 6 months later, and the entire town agrees it was your fault. Senior year, you visit the state college 4 hours away for a campus tour. You walk across the quad. Nobody looks up. You eat dinner alone at a noodle shop and the waiter calls you ma'am instead of sweetheart. You sleep in a dorm bed that night, and for 36 hours, you forget what your face does to a room. Then you drive home, and the second you cross the county line, the guy at the gas pump asks if you've been working out. You get accepted in March. Partial scholarship. Roommate assignment. Packing list taped to your bedroom mirror. Then your mom gets diagnosed. You defer for a year to take care of her. You take a job at the diner where Mrs. Donnelly used to give you milkshakes. Mrs. Donnelly retired 2 years ago. The new owner is a man named Gary, 56, married, 3 kids. He hires you in 11 minutes. He tells his wife you're a hard worker. His wife comes in once a week to watch you. You become very good at the job. You memorize the orders of every regular. You learn which truckers tip in cash and which ones leave a phone number on the napkin. You learn to laugh at jokes that aren't funny because the tip on a $15 breakfast is the difference between paying the electric bill or not. You count it once. In 1 month, 14 free coffees offered. 6 business cards slid across the counter. 2 marriage proposals from men over 50. 3 notes that just say, "Call me," with no name attached. You don't call any of them, but your name still ends up in conversations you weren't part of. Pastor Jim's wife stops sitting next to your mom at church. She moves 3 pews back. Your mom asks why. You tell her you don't know. You do know. Pastor Jim's car has been driving past the diner 4 times a shift, and his wife has noticed. Your mom never says anything about it directly, but you catch her watching you sometimes the way the rest of the town does, only sadder, like she knew this was coming the day you were born and never figured out how to warn you. She rubs your back at the kitchen sink one night and says, "I'm sorry." You don't ask what for. You both already know. You try to date someone normal. A guy named Ben who works at the lumberyard. Quiet. Don't drink. Calls his mom every Sunday. For 6 weeks, it almost feels like real life. Then his friends start a rumor that he's only with you because you slept with 3 of them first. None of it is true. None of it has to be true. The rumor moves faster than you can. Ben breaks up with you in the parking lot of the diner on a Tuesday afternoon. He cries. He says he believes you. He breaks up with you anyway, because his dad asked him at dinner if he knew what people were saying. You stop going to the grocery store on Saturdays. You stop going to the diner on your days off. You stop going outside before sundown. You start ordering everything online and picking it up at the post office, because the post office has 1 employee, and she's 81, and she can't see well enough to recognize you. One afternoon at the grocery store, 3 women your mother's age corner you in the parking lot between your car and a row of carts. They don't yell. They don't have to. One of them, Mrs. Halloran, the English teacher's wife, tells you very quietly that you should leave town for everyone's sake. The other 2 don't say anything. They don't need to. They came along to make sure she said it. That's when the calls start. 47 missed calls in 1 week from a number you never gave out. You change your number. The calls start again 4 days later. You change it again. Same thing. You go to Sheriff Boyd. He listens. He nods. He writes it down. He tells you he'll look into it. He does not look into it. The number belongs to his nephew. You find that out a month later when his nephew rolls down the window of a pickup truck at a 4-way stop and tells you he just wants to talk. One morning you find a folded note tucked under your windshield wiper. No name on it. The note says, "I see you every day." You take it inside. You don't show your mom. You add it to a shoebox under your bed where you keep the other notes, 23 of them now, that you've collected since you were 16. You decide to leave. You save for 8 months. You hide cash in a hollowed-out book in your closet. You don't tell anyone. Your mom is in remission. Your sister is old enough to take over the bills. There is no reason to stay. There has never been a reason to stay. You buy a 1-way bus ticket for a Tuesday at 6:14 a.m. The night before, you go to the gas station to fill up your car for the drive to the bus station. That's where it happens. The truck pulls in behind you. The headlights stay on. The engine doesn't cut. You can see the silhouette through the windshield. You don't recognize him. He recognizes you. Everyone in this town recognizes you. You go inside. You pretend to look at the chips. You ask the cashier, a kid named Devin who graduated 2 years behind you, to walk you to your car. He does. The truck pulls out behind you anyway. You drive 8 miles in the wrong direction. You loop around 3 back roads. You park in your neighbor's driveway with your lights off and you wait until the truck doesn't come. You sleep in your car that night. You don't go inside the house. You don't tell your mom. At 5:30 a.m. you drive to the bus station with your 1 suitcase and the hollow book money taped to your stomach under your shirt. The bus pulls away at 6:14 a.m. You don't look back at the town. You look at your phone. You scroll through the 17 text messages you got in the night from numbers you didn't recognize, asking where you were. You delete them one at a time. By the time the bus crosses the county line, your phone is empty. You arrive in the city 6 hours later. You walk 3 blocks from the station to the apartment you rented sight unseen. You pass 200 people on the sidewalk. None of them look at you. A man on a bench is reading a newspaper. He doesn't look up. A woman pushing a stroller passes you on your left. She doesn't look up. A group of college kids spills out of a coffee shop laughing. They walk straight through you like you aren't there. You stop in the middle of the sidewalk. People move around you like water around a stone. For the first time in your life, nobody is watching. You stand there for a full minute. Then 2. Then 5. You wait for someone to recognize you. Nobody does. You wait for a truck to slow down. None of them do. You wait for a man to call you sweetheart. Not one of them does. You start crying on the sidewalk because you finally understand what you've been carrying. You spent 12 years thinking the problem was you. Your face. Your body. Something you were doing wrong. You spent 12 years apologizing for the way strangers looked at you. You spent 12 years being told you were lucky. You weren't lucky. You were watched. In a small town, beauty isn't a currency. It's an address. Everyone knows where to find you. Everyone has an opinion about you. Everyone owns a piece of you that you never sold. You walk the last block to your apartment. You put your key in the door. You go inside. You sit on the floor of an empty room in a city of 9 million strangers. And you breathe. You look up. There's a mirror over the closet door. You stand up. You walk over to it. You look at your face for the first time in maybe a year. It's just a face. 2 eyes. A nose. A mouth. It isn't a sentence. It isn't an address. It isn't an invitation. It is just a face, and for the first time in your life, it belongs to you. For the first time since you were 14, nobody knows your name. And that is the closest thing to freedom you have ever felt.